Welcome to Timeless Technology. This is Huawei P9, which is the company's attempt to play with the big boys. In this review I'm gonna explain everything that I liked and didn't like about this phone, and whether the P9 has what it takes to take on Samsung, iPhone or other mainstream choices. So let's begin with the design. The P9 looks like a blend of last year's P8 and Mate S. It has a very thin and sleek aluminium body that measures at 7mm. In the hand, this phone feels amazing. Thanks to its flat back and slightly rounded edges, the P9 is comfy in the hand, though the aluminium back has a certain drawback. It is a bit slippy, so be careful not to drop it. The build quality of the P9 is really great, and in my opinion, Huawei are beating HTC at their own game of making a great aluminium phone. Every part fits perfectly, nothing moves or squeaks, and I can confidently say that this is, again, in my opinion, the best built phone between the current Android flagships. On the front we will see a Gorilla Glass 4 surface with slightly rounded edges and a slight pattern of stripes. I'm a bit sad that it has a Huawei logo on the bottom chin, since the P8 didn't have that, and in my opinion it is a slight design downgrade, because the front of the P8 looks so elegant and minimalistic without the logo. The left side has a combined SIM and microSD tray, and in certain markets you can purchase the dual SIM model, in which you can put a second SIM card in the memory card instead. On the right side we have a power button and a volume rocker. I really don't like this layout. My finger often confused the buttons and pressed the volume rocker when I wanted to unlock the screen, but I guess it's something you have to get used to. And finally, on the bottom we have a 3.5mm audio jack, USB Type-C port, 2 screws and a tiny little speaker grill. Speaking of the screws, this phone is relatively easy to repair, according to iFixit, which is always nice. On the back we will see a fingerprint reader, which, at least for me, works really fast. It works just as fast as the reader on my Nexus 5X, and I use it as an unlock button since it can wake up the device almost instantly. A bit higher there is something very familiar to Huawei P8 and Nexus 6P owners, and that is a black strip of glass they are calling visor. On the visor there are two cameras, a double LED flashlight and a Leica logo. Yep, it's obvious that they are quite proud of the partnership with Leica. They are actually so proud of this partnership that they offer an option to add the Leica watermark to every photo. Thank God it's an option. There's been a lot of controversy surrounding the Leica partnership. What's the actual involvement of Leica in the development? Did they actually do anything or just license their name? To be honest, I don't really care. What I do care about is whether this camera is any good. And oh boy, it is! So the point of these two cameras is that one sensor captures light in full RGB colors, but the other one just takes monochrome images. According to Huawei, that should improve both saturation and details, since one camera can be dedicated to capturing color, but the other one for details. Another side effects of this combo are a higher dynamic range and a better low light performance. The pictures that I took with the P9 indeed look great. They are really vivid and pleasant. Here are some pictures from old Riga. Just look at that red color on that sexy Vespa. Here is a picture of my friend's cat in my lap, shot in a dimly lit room. The P9 also offers shallow depth of field photos in special camera mode. While the camera itself has an aperture of f2.2, it is obvious that they are enhancing the pictures with some software tricks, because in my opinion, the pictures shot in this mode are hit or miss. For instance, in this picture it is really jarring and fake looking. However, in this one, the foreground is neatly separated from the background and the bokeh is great. However, I still think that the software could use some improvements. First of all, the camera isn't as fast as, for example, Samsung or Sony, both at launch and at capture. Secondly, the layout of the camera app is a bit confusing for first-time users, and for me it took some time to figure out where the RAW option or similar settings are. Another drawback of this phone's camera is that it only shoots up to 1080p 60fps video, without the option of 4K. But other than that, this is an amazing camera, and it is one of P9's strengths. This phone is powered by their own Kirin chipset, rather than a Qualcomm option. I think that diversity in the phone market is a good thing, because Qualcomm is getting too comfy resting in their monopoly. The P9 benchmarks quite well, and Tutu puts it very near the top, only below some of the Qualcomm A20 powered flagships, and in real world usage it is great too. The CPU seems to be strong, but the GPU is a bit weaker than the competitors. I really didn't experience any lag in everyday tasks, and games, even demanding ones, didn't prove to be much of a challenge for the P9. You know what I'm really sick of? I hate when manufacturers separate their models by giving less RAM to the cheaper option. This is no exception, and the 32GB model has only 3GB of RAM, whereas the 64 model has 4. Also, my phone, which has the dual SIM version, for some reason didn't have NFC. So yeah, that's weird. The battery is decently big at 3000 mAh, and I never struggle with it to endure, at least until the evening. With my standard use, Reddit, Twitter, Instagram, emails, a couple of calls and Spotify, I got about 4 to 5 hours screen on time, which is probably the industry average between the flagships. I must say that I really like the software options for this phone's battery. You can manually adjust the power mode, use this phone in upscaled 720p if you fancy some extra battery savings, and, what is really nice, or annoying depending on the user, the phone notifies when an app consumes more power than it should. So basically it has Greenify built in. Also, I should mention that this phone supports quick charge over USB Type-C. I really like the screen. It is a 5.2-inch IPS display with 1080p resolution. In my opinion, 1080p is still fine for most users, and the colors are really good, vivid and bright, and the blacks are deep for an LCD panel. Of course, AMOLEDs would have even deeper blacks and higher saturation, but not everyone likes AMOLED displays, and for those who like IPS, this is one of the better choices. Overall, I'm pretty satisfied with hardware on the P9, and at least in my opinion, it can surely go head to head with the mainstream flagships. I'm not so sure about the software though. The P9 is powered by Android Marshmallow, but it's not that obvious. The so-called Emotion UI looks really dated and you can't tell whether it's running Marshmallow, KitKat or even Gingerbread. Huawei is obviously going for a sort of an iOS meets Android look, with some places looking more obviously Apple inspired than others. For some reason, every Chinese phone I've used has this iOS sort of springboard look, lacking an app drawer. I really dislike it, and Nova Launcher was one of the first apps that I installed on the P9 to make it as close to what I'm used to as possible. Which is sad, because as ugly as it looks, the software actually has some nifty features. One of my favorite features was the task switcher. Basically, you get this list of open apps, and by swiping up you can close an app, but if you swipe it downwards you can lock it, so it does not get accidentally closed down. One really cool feature that I'd like to see in other phones or even stock Android is this one. If you miss a call, the phone app shows for how long did the person on the other side call, for how long did you keep him waiting. And again, the battery manager is great. However, these features didn't keep me from reaching for my Nexus. I think that Huawei has nailed the hardware, but they still have a lot to learn in making software. The Nexus 6P showed what Huawei can do when they trust Google with making software, so seeing a damn fine phone like the P9 getting hindered by software is especially sad. And lastly, in the box you will find the following: the phone itself, a charger, a USB Type-C to legacy USB cable, a pair of earphones that look suspiciously similar to competitor's product, and some literature. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, you know which button to press.